Bernadette Maduro, and I am thrilled to be part of Proud Dems US. We're an organization committed to helping Democratic candidates be successful. And right now we are filming the incredible New Mexico Democratic candidates that we have for statewide offices. We're trying to go deep so that you can hear them, see them, and decide which is the best candidate for you to vote for on June 7th.
And I'm Roberto James Montoya, and I hope that you enjoy this presentation of Meet the Candidate. Hello and welcome to ProudDems.us presentation of Meet the Candidate. I'm Roberto James and
Bernadette Maduro, Chair of Santa Fe County Democrats, and proud to be working with our Proud Dem group. And today we have the opportunity to hear from candidate Brian Colon, who is running for Attorney General. So Brian, we want to know who you are. Will you mind going into a deep dive with us and tell us, where did you come from? Were you born in New Mexico? Tell us about your family. Do you have siblings? And bring us up to where you're at with your status in life today.
Great. Well, look, Bernadette and Roberto, it's great to be here with Proud Dems US. Look, this is a great opportunity for us to all get to know each other, and I'm really grateful for that chance to do so. As to the question, where are you coming from? Who are you? I am a New Mexican. I've been here my whole life. I grew up in rural New Mexico, down in Valencia County, Los Lunas, Bosque Farms area, and I've never left. And I will tell you that I grew up like most New Mexicans. I know the New Mexican story, and that is really, honestly, if we're going to be with one another, it's a story of growing up in poverty. I grew up with two parents who were disabled. My father had a horrible disease called muscular dystrophy, and literally growing up in Section 8 housing and relying on every single democratic value and program that was available to my family for survival, I literally watched my father deteriorate before my very eyes. The disease of muscular dystrophy took him at the young age of just 49 years. I was a teenager at the time, and from that moment on, I didn't have a single blood relative left in the state of New Mexico. But what I did have was his dream, Roberto, that I would actually be the first in my family to go to college and break the cycle of poverty. As I sit here before you today, I can tell you that without family, community filled the gap for me. And I really did live my father's dream. I went to New Mexico State University. I lived in Las Cruces for a full decade. It's where I tell people I was on the tenure track, but not for a professorship. It actually took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree, but I did. I finally achieved that dream of my father and got that degree, and I went straight to law school after that. In between, I had a wonderful woman that I met who really changed my life and got me to focus on that degree. Her name is Aleli. She's an immigrant from the Philippines, and she's a civil engineer with a master's in math, but she's dedicated her life to educating children in Albuquerque's deepest pocket of poverty, the International District. So that's my wife. We have a wonderful 25-year-old son, Rafael, named after my father who passed away, who is a proud graduate of Albuquerque High School and is now one generation out from that poverty, one generation out from the time that I can recall having my car repossessed and frankly being a couch surfer because I didn't have a place to stay. I relied upon my family, friends who put a roof over my head. One generation later, my son graduates from Albuquerque High School, gets a presidential scholarship to go to GW, and now he's a civil engineer, or a biomedical engineer. My wife's the civil, he's the biomedical engineer. And so people say, where do you get all your energy? And hopefully you can tell that that energy comes from a place of gratitude. Gratitude that I was able to live my father's dream, gratitude that I have a wonderful family who doesn't really know what that poverty was like, and gratitude that I've been able to live my father's dream by going to New Mexico State University, going to UNM School of Law, and now practicing law for 21 years. And today, as I'm with you, and 4 years ago, I started living my dream of service to my community, because I have a debt that I've got to repay. From where I sit, that debt is one that I'll never be able to repay fully, but I'm gonna die trying. And the best way I know how is to take a 21-year legal career, a 21-year journey of pouring into community, involving myself with people from all over New Mexico, in mentoring and pouring into young people, and protecting. What I did was protect my younger brother and sister and my family when I was young, and now I've tried to protect communities from people that want to harm them, protect individuals who have been the subject of predatory lenders, experiences that I know about. I've been able to do that as state auditor You say, where are you now? Well, that's where I'm at right now. I'm your state auditor. I've fought waste, fraud, and abuse. I have held corrupt public officials accountable, whether they be Democrats or Republicans. We've just done the right thing. Coy Griffin, who stole money from Otero County and used it for Cowboys for Trump, we made him pay it back. Corrupt public officials that were abusing power, like the mayor of Las Vegas, she's no longer the mayor. She's now a convicted felon because we did the right thing. We have pushed back against Big Pharma. We'll have a multi-million-dollar settlement, the first time in the history of the Office of the State Auditor, for overcharging seniors for 1 million prescriptions in New Mexico. Look, this is the work I've been passionate about doing. I've done it in collaboration with the Attorney General's office for the last 3 years, 5 months, and 15 days. And now I want to work as your Attorney General to do more of the same. Protecting our families, protecting our communities, protecting our environment, protecting a woman's right to health care, to make their own choices, to receive the respect you deserve, to know that you can make those decisions for yourself as to whether or not you want to have an abortion. I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood of New Mexico. I'm proud of that because I've got a lifelong career of saying, yes, we will respect women and we will respect their choice. So look, I know we've got a lot to talk about. That's enough about me specifically in my journey. It brings me to this point right here with Proud Dems US, and I'm grateful for both of you.
Thank you so much, Brian.
During the past, it says 15 years, but you go beyond that. Which jobs have you had in the past, and how will those jobs help you in this role that you're running for?
That's a great question, Roberto. And Bernadette, you know that I've been passionate about serving community and protecting communities as the state auditor of New Mexico. And that's been the last 3.5 years. But before that, I've had a whole legal career of almost 2 decades of really fighting for people on the margins, whether it be fighting for individuals who've been taken advantage of by big corporations or insurance companies, or fighting for communities where their community had big companies come in and extract resources from those communities. Then I came in and tried to hold them accountable for the work that they did and the injury they caused. And then when they left that community, we said, we're going to make sure that you invest in job training and economic development for these communities so that you don't leave them holding the bag for the profits that company had made. So we've done that. I have advocated for families who've lost loved ones under the circumstances of having a child lost to a drunk driver. Advocating not just holding that driver accountable, but also those who chose to overserve that driver. And not only those who chose to overserve that driver, but the companies that were picking up the tab for that driver to make those bad choices. We have always been a champion for those, frankly, who've been on the margins. I've done that work for 20 years as a civil litigator. Countless individuals, I've been able to be their champ. And I want to do that for New Mexico as Attorney General.
Great.
Excellent. So can you tell me in your own words what you believe the primary goals are that you want to achieve as Attorney General? And do you believe that you have sufficient staff to get the job done?
Bernadette, great question. And the last part is a question that you can ask any leader in government. Look, we have suffered through 8 years of cuts to the bone under the Martinez administration. We are finally building back under Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. We're finally building back a healthy and robust set of resources for governmental agencies like the Auditor's Office, like the Attorney General's Office, so that we can serve communities to do what the people of New Mexico need us to do, which is watch their back. And I got to tell you that I don't think we're there yet, but I think we continue to increase those investments, and I hope that we continue to do that with the Office of the Attorney General. Look, there's 200 employees at the AG's office. There's more than a dozen divisions. Now, what I want to accomplish is to evaluate, are we effectively achieving our goals the way it's currently established? I will tell you that the first thing I'm going to do is reevaluate where the environmental division is. We're going to place that front and center. It has been moved underneath another division at the AG's office. And for me, when I talk to the people of all 33 counties of New Mexico, whether it's in the north or the south, rural or urban, people say, look, climate change, protecting our environment, that is number one. And we need the Attorney General to be strong on that. So if that's true, which I agree that it is, then we've got to place that division front and center in the office. So that's going to be the first thing I do. We're going to build out a more robust environment division at the Office of the Attorney General to protect our air, protect our waters, make sure that we have environmental justice. And we don't talk about that a lot. I also want to make sure that we have indigenous voices in that environmental division. Look, the indigenous people, they have been protecting our environment for thousands of years. But to this day, in 2022, we have still failed to put them front and center in that conversation. If you think about all the protected lands in the country that are protected because they are inhabited by and protected by indigenous populations in New Mexico and elsewhere, that's where we have some of the most robust environmental ecosystems. Why? Because they're experts at protecting water, protecting our environment, protecting the air and our culture. Here in New Mexico, we're multicultural, and I think one of the things that makes us most special is that indigenous population that we have, the 23 Pueblos, nations, and tribes that we cherish. And I want to have them front and center in that environmental department. We want to build out a robust consumer protection division. It's personal to me. You know my story, Bernadette, and I think Roberto, you do too, to a certain degree, but like I know what it is to walk into a payday lender's storefront. I know what it is to walk into a pawn shop. I know what it is to be so far on the margins that regardless of what that individual says, I'm going to be willing to sign that document you put in front of me because I need those tiny resources for survival. So when I'm out there protecting consumers, it's personal. And then finally, the last thing I'd say, and I know it's on the front of a lot of people's minds, but it has to be properly placed in the office because it's a big office with just a few criminal prosecutors. We need to be that line of last resort for victims, making sure that victims of violent crime have a place they can go if the local system is not serving them well. If they're not seen and heard, then they need to be able to come to the Attorney General's office and find a champion. And I want to be that champion for those victims of violent crimes in New Mexico and really convene the stakeholders. It's the judiciary, the district attorneys, the behavioral health, the mental health, and the AG's office that have to work together to advance a common agenda in that body of 112 that sits in Santa Fe just a couple months a year, right? To advance that legislation that properly protects our community by really building a public safety system that works. And you can't do that in a vacuum with just one silver bullet. You've got to make sure that you're addressing the issues that are the underlying root causes. And we know those root causes. It's poverty, it's behavioral health, it's mental health. It's not having solid reintegration programs when people are being released from incarceration. We don't have that in New Mexico. I want to build that out.
So the next question is, can you tell us about the different offices that you've run for and won and lost, and how that will affect your running this position?
I have never given up on being a public servant. And I've done that with the title or without, with an office or without. I think you all know that I've been showing up for 2 decades. And I started out just as a precinct chair, in my neighborhood. And long story short, I ultimately became chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, where we had phenomenal success. It was the first time in history that we actually had 5 of our federal delegates, all Democrats. We had elected Harry Teague when I was chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, had a full Democratic federal delegation. We elected President Obama, and then I ran to be lieutenant governor. And in a 5-way, hotly contested primary, we won that race. I was your nominee for lieutenant governor and had my running mate Diane Dennis, and we weren't able to close the deal, and New Mexico suffered greatly under Susana Martinez. After that, I'm coming back now and ran for state auditor and was successful in a head-to-head primary and a head-to-head general against the incumbent, and Democrats carried me across that finish line in spectacular form. And I said that I would keep showing up, not just before the election to ask for a vote, but after the election to serve. And I think I've been able to hold true to my word, and now I'm seeking another opportunity to continue my service to New Mexicans and families like mine when I grew up in Valencia County.
So tell us, Brian, what do you believe has been the most challenging part of running this particular race?
I think there have been a lot of challenges for all the candidates in this particular race. Look, we are coming out of unprecedented times. We're coming out of a pandemic that lasted far longer than any of us could have imagined. We're coming out of a situation where families were scared, who didn't have basic resources, and who needed assistance. That's been difficult. When's the right time to host events? When's the right time for us to gather publicly? Do we try and bring people together, or do we try and respect the danger that we were in under COVID-19? That's been a huge challenge. It's a lot of uncertainty, not just for us as candidates, but for the families of New Mexico. Each and every family in New Mexico was unclear when's the right time to start coming together for events, right? So that's been a huge challenge. I think the other thing that we've experienced in the last month is suffering through the largest wildfire in the history of our state of New Mexico. You know, I really fear for our families' safeties in northern New Mexico. We continue to put more counties on alert. We've now exceeded hundreds of thousands of acres, and there are people who've lost everything. And so me being able to balance my time like I was last night, supporting one of the fire victims relief efforts last night, what's the balance of time? How is it appropriate for me to spend half an hour with you, or should I be out there trying to raise resources, or should I be focused on my core responsibility as a state auditor? That has been a huge challenge, and I think that's the challenge for most candidates. It's like, I'm frankly sending out an email soliciting resources so I can get my message to the people of New Mexico, the 200,000 people that are going to vote in this election. But there's a real, and I know this isn't unique to me, I think every candidate on the ballot right now, when we hit send on a fundraising email for our campaign, I know we do it with a heavy heart, because there's a part of me that says, should this email be a fundraising email for the victims of the fire in northern New Mexico? And so I've tried to strike that balance. I've tried to engage community in those relief efforts. I've tried to send out emails that talk about the resources available. And frankly, Madam Chair, you've done a great job of communicating those resources to the folks that are engaged in Santa Fe County. I mean, beautiful. I think I probably took a couple of my data points from my email out of yours, right? Like, but that's what we're all trying to do. But when you say what's been most difficult, I think these are the pinch points for every candidate on the ballot. How do we campaign in a time like this when people are hurting, people are unsure what the future holds, but we know that there's also a lot more at risk, whether it be what's going on at the federal level. I mean, you've got to have a strong attorney general that's going to say, look, we're going to protect women's rights for access to safe health care and the right to respect the decisions they make, regardless of what the judiciary does, regardless of what our neighboring states do. We will not criminalize that activity for people that are New Mexico residents or for people that come to New Mexico for health care. Like, let's be clear, this is a big, big deal. And so for me, it's trying to balance the local uncertainty we have right now for our family safety because of natural disaster and the pandemic, versus some of these big public policy issues that I know I can protect and advance as Attorney General. I think that's been the biggest challenge.
Excellent.
So another question, let's say you win this race, where do you see yourself in 25 years and along that path to the 25 years? 25
years, my goodness, I will be a very young 77-year-old man. I will still be getting up at 5 a.m. and going to bed at midnight. I will still be meeting with mentees every morning at 7 o'clock, taking them to breakfast, pouring into them, taking the 25,000 contacts I have in my iPhone, although probably we won't have an iPhone, it'll just be a Rolodex up here. But I'll be pouring into them because I am passionate about doing that. I'll retire and have a bed and breakfast to embrace community and educate them about the beauty of New Mexico and the texture that is in our state that is nowhere else in the world. Preserving and promoting our culture, it's what I love doing. But I think somebody said it best when they said, you know, I know a lot of guys who collect baseball cards. I said, yeah, I'm not much of a sports guy. So we know, instead of baseball cards, you collect mentees. And I think that was one of the best compliments I could ever get, because I love pouring into young people. I've got a young person with me now that I've been mentoring since he was in high school. He's now getting ready to start law school in August. He graduated from UNM last week. We're very, very proud. And I think being in public service and mentoring young people has always been my passion, and I think in 25 years, I can't imagine that changing.
And so this brings us to our last question, and that includes your closing question. So please tell us and the audience why you are indeed the best candidate for this position.
Madam Chair, Roberto, thank you for this opportunity. This is great. It's unprecedented. Let me just say thanks for your leadership and your creativity and carrying our message to these great folks. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Look, 60 seconds or less. I bring a broad level of experience to an office that has a broad mission and charge. It's about leadership and vision. It's about understanding the lens one looks through in order to provide leadership. I have been a lifelong New Mexican who's passionate about serving others, who's passionate about protecting our communities, our individual families, those who've been on the margins, those who've been invisible for far too long. I've been passionate about being a watchdog for New Mexicans so that when they're out there working hard to keep the lights on, I'm at the Office of the State Auditor making sure that their money is being spent appropriately and holding those accountable who choose not to. whether it's corrupt public officials, big pharma, or anybody else that gets in the way of New Mexicans getting what they deserve, and that's the best. I know that experience of being a 20-year-plus civil litigator and the state auditor of New Mexico, and frankly, the way I was brought up, in community, by community. This passion I have to serve is very personal, sincere, and I'm just asking for the opportunity to take this journey that I've been on, to leverage that journey with my legal career and the experience I've gained as state auditor so that I can protect our environment, protect our communities, and serve as New Mexico's top watchdog and protector of our beautiful Tierra del Encanto, the land of enchantment, that 47th star on our beautiful flag of the United States of America. And my name is Brian Colon. I need your vote by June 7th.
Brian Colon for Attorney General.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
You're the best. Thank you.